My name is Kes Valori, third archivist of the Delvari people, and I am writing this record so that the truth is never lost. Archivists do not usually appear in their own records. We are trained to stay invisible, to let history speak without our feelings bleeding into it. But I have decided that this time, I will break that rule. Because what happened to my people, what was done for my people, deserves more than cold facts on a data slate. It deserves a witness. It deserves someone who was there and is willing to say, I saw it, I felt it, and I will never be the same. Let me start at the beginning. The Delvari are not warriors. We never were. For 6,000 years we built libraries, mapped the stars, composed music that other species called the most beautiful sound in the known galaxy. We were proud of our gentleness. We believed, truly believed, that the universe rewarded those who chose reason over force, patience over anger. We had agreements with every major civilization. We had no enemies. We thought that meant we were safe. We were wrong. The Choir of the Void did not arrive with a declaration or a demand. It simply appeared at the edge of our solar system one morning, a massive structure of dark metal and cold light, humming with a sound that our instruments could not fully translate. It was ancient, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. It was not alive in any way we recognized, and it was not cruel in any way we could appeal to. It was a machine that consumed biospheres, the living surface of planets, and converted that energy into fuel for its own expansion. It had done this to 11 other worlds before ours. Those worlds were now silent. Our world was next. We sent messages. We offered everything we had, our archives, our music, our star maps, our technology. We asked what it wanted. We begged it to speak to us. The choir did not respond. It was not ignoring us. It simply did not register us as anything worth answering. To the choir, we were not people. We were fuel. Within 2 weeks, the burning began. 3 million of us managed to evacuate to our orbital stations before the surface became unreachable. We watched our libraries burn. We watched our cities turn to ash. We watched the blue-green world where our children had played and our elders had died. The world we had called home for thousands of years become a dim, orange ruin beneath a smoke-filled sky. And then we sent the signal. The galactic distress cry is a format so ancient and so universally recognized that every spacefaring species has a treaty obligation to respond. It has only been used 3 times in recorded galactic history. Every time, the galaxy answered. Ships came. The suffering was shortened. That was what the treaties were for. I stood beside our communications elder, Saru, when we sent it. His hands were shaking. Mine were too. But we both believed, in that moment, that the signal would work. The galaxy would hear us. Help would come. The first response arrived from the Vathori Conclave, the oldest civilization in the known galaxy, with a fleet that could cross entire star systems in days. Their message was polite. It expressed deep regret. It noted that engaging the Choir of the Void carried risks to Conclave stability that could not be accepted. They offered to take 10,000 of our people as refugees. 10,000 out of 3 million. Saru read the message twice. Then he set it down very carefully on the desk, as if he was afraid of what he might do if he held it any longer. The Skeen Collective replied next. They were a hive mind species, 800 worlds connected in a single shared consciousness. They had more processing power than most civilizations had ever dreamed of. Their answer was 3 sentences long. The choir, they said, followed mathematical patterns of inevitability. Interference was statistically futile. They would record our culture for posterity, so that our people's memory would not be lost. Our memory, not our lives, our memory. The Oran Merchant Guilds, the wealthiest organization in the galaxy, offered evacuation contracts. Fully insured, they said, competitive rates. Payment required upfront. When one of my junior archivists, a young woman named Pole, read the price listed at the bottom of their message, she laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes when something is so terrible that your body doesn't know how else to respond. The Galvex Federation, who called themselves the Peacekeepers of the Galaxy, sent the longest message. It was full of careful language about mandates and jurisdictions, and the complexity of intervention policy. The final conclusion was short. The choir had not violated Federation borders. Their mandate did not extend to this conflict at this time. At this time, as if there would be another time, as if we had another time to give. I remember the silence in the communications room after the last response came in. 3 million people were living in stations designed for 400,000. Our elders were dying, not from wounds, but from grief, a condition our doctors had no medicine for. Our children were sleeping in hallways and cargo bays, asking questions that none of us could answer. I had nothing left to say to anyone. I went to the observation window, and I looked at what remained of Delvar Prime, and I thought, this is what it means to be truly alone in the universe. Not alone because no one is nearby. Alone because no one will move. That was when Pole ran in. She was holding a data slate, and she was breathing hard, as if she had run the full length of the station to reach me. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something I could not immediately identify. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Hope. She looked like someone who had just seen something that had no right to exist. Archivist, she said. Someone answered. I did not believe her at first. I took the data slate from her hands and I read the message myself, twice, 3 times, because I needed to be certain I was not misunderstanding. The message was not from a government. It was from something called the Terran Mutual Aid Armada. I had heard of humans, of course, a young species from a small planet in the Orion Arm, barely a few centuries into space travel, not yet considered a major power by any galactic standard. We knew them as enthusiastic, somewhat chaotic, and prone to making decisions based on feelings rather than logic. The message said, "We received your distress call. We are coming. Please transmit your current position and the location of the hostile entity. We will be there in 41 days. 41 days. They had already left before we even confirmed whether help was coming. They had seen the signal, turned their ships around, and started flying. When I went to the observation window again, I was looking for them before I even realized I was doing it. They arrived 41 days later, just as they had promised. I had imagined many things during those 41 days. I had tried not to hope too much. I had told myself that even if humans came, there was little that such a young species could realistically do against something that had defeated civilizations 10 times their age. I prepared for disappointment. What I was not prepared for was the sight of that fleet coming out of faster-than-light travel and into our system. It was not a perfect fleet. That was the first thing I noticed. The ships were not uniform. They were not all the same design, or the same age, or even the same color. There were military vessels that looked like they had been through several wars and repaired in a hurry between each one. There were large cargo haulers with company names still printed on their hulls, now fitted with weapon systems that had been attached recently and somewhat imprecisely. There were 2 ships that my scanner identified as colony transports, ships that carry settlers to new worlds, which had absolutely no business being anywhere near a combat zone. And there was a hospital ship, a white vessel with medical markings, flying straight toward our refugee station without slowing down. I stood at the communication console myself to take the incoming call. The face that appeared on the screen was a human woman, perhaps 60 years old by human reckoning, with dark eyes and gray at the edges of her dark hair, and a long scar along her jaw that had healed well, but had clearly once been serious. She was wearing a uniform that was neat but not formal. She looked like someone who had been awake for a long time and had decided that sleep was someone else's problem right now. "This is Fleet Admiral Yara Santos of the Terran Mutual Aid Armada," she said. Her voice was calm and direct, with no diplomatic decoration. "We received your distress call 41 days ago. I'm sorry it took us this long to get here." She said that last part like she meant it, like 41 days was a personal failure she intended to account for later. "How many people do we need to get out, and where is the enemy?" I opened my mouth. I closed it. I tried again. "Admiral Santos," I said carefully, "I must ask, why are you here? The Choir of the Void is not your enemy. You have no treaty with the Delvari. You risk your entire fleet, your lives, for people you do not know. Why?" She looked at me for a moment, not impatiently, more like she was genuinely considering whether my question deserved a long answer or a short one. "Because you asked," she said. 3 words. That was all. I felt something shift inside me, in a place I had thought was already past feeling anything. In the days that followed, while the human fleet set up a defensive line between the choir and what remained of our population, I did what archivists do. I recorded. I observed. I talked to people. I met a man named Dario who was 62 years old and had spent his entire life farming a colony world at the edge of human space. He had no military training. He had never been in a battle. He had loaded his agricultural transport ship with food supplies, actual food, tons of it, because he had heard we were running short, and flown it across the galaxy into a war zone. When I asked him why, he was quiet for a long moment. "I watched the broadcast of your distress signal," he said. "I was eating dinner. I couldn't finish it after. I kept thinking about all those people, children." He shrugged. A very human gesture I was beginning to understand meant, "The answer is obvious to me. I don't know how to make it more clear. I had a ship, I had food, so I came." I talked to a squad of young human soldiers who were clearly frightened. Their hands moved too fast when they talked and their eyes checked the doors too often. But they were also working, constantly, cleaning their equipment, studying readouts of the choir's movement patterns, drawing up plans on whatever flat surface was available. One of them, the youngest, noticed me watching and came to speak with me. "My grandmother survived a terrible thing when she was young," he said. "She always told me the hardest part wasn't what happened. It was remembering all the people who saw it coming and decided it wasn't their problem." He met my eyes steadily. I didn't want to be one of those people. I talked to Admiral Santos once more, in private, the night before the battle. She was studying tactical readouts, a cup of something hot and dark, coffee, I had learned, sitting forgotten beside her. I asked her whether there had been any doubt, on humanity's side, about whether to come. She was honest with me. There was a lot of debate, she said. People were afraid. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy, not even close. A lot of voices said this wasn't our fight, that we couldn't afford the loss. She picked up the cup, looked into it, set it back down. And then someone in the council said, "If not us, who?" And the room got very quiet, because nobody had a good answer to that. The battle began at dawn by our station's internal clock. The choir did not change its behavior when the human fleet approached. Its own tactical systems, we later understood, had calculated a 2.7% chance that humanity could cause it meaningful trouble. It had seen their fleet. It had assessed their technology. The math, according to the choir, was clear. But the choir had never fought humans before. The human ships did not fight the way any fleet I had read about in galactic history fought. They did not hold formation cleanly. They were constantly moving, constantly adjusting, doing things that made no logical sense according to standard tactical models. When the choir's systems adapted to predict their movement, the humans changed the movement. When a position was clearly lost, the humans gave it up, and then took back something else that they had no right to be able to reach. They improvised. They made decisions in seconds that should have taken hours of analysis. Twice during the battle, I was certain it was over. Twice, something happened that I could not have predicted. Once, 2 ships that were badly damaged broadcast an open message to the rest of the fleet. Not a request for help, not a signal to retreat. Just 2 crews saying, "We're still here." And the rest of the fleet, hearing that, pushed forward harder. The choir was built to predict behavior. It was ancient and powerful and had consumed 11 worlds because nothing it had ever encountered was willing to keep fighting when the numbers said to stop. It had never met people who looked at the numbers, thought they seemed wrong, and kept fighting anyway. The choir's core was destroyed 4 hours into the battle, not cleanly, not with a single perfect strike. It came apart under the accumulated pressure of thousands of small, relentless, unreasonable human decisions. When it finally went silent, the hum that had been present since the choir arrived, a sound so constant that we had stopped noticing it, disappeared. The quiet that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I did not realize I was crying until Pol put her hand on my arm. 3 weeks later, I attended the human memorial service for their dead. There were 2,300 names on the list. Each name was read aloud. It took a long time. I stood through all of it. These were people who had come from a world I had never visited, to fight for people they had never met, for reasons that no galactic treaty required of them. They had farms they would not return to, children who were now waiting, dinners that would go cold. Admiral Santos found me after, standing near the edge of the crowd. We did not speak for a while. We looked at the same point in the middle distance, both of us carrying things that did not have words yet. Finally, I asked her the question I had been holding since the very beginning. 2,300 of your people are gone because of us, because we asked. How do you carry that? She breathed in slowly, out slowly. The same way they would want us to, she said, by making sure it mattered. I write this record now from a temporary shelter on a station that smells like too many people and not enough air, with the sound of children running in the corridor outside, and elders telling stories to anyone who will listen, keeping our history alive until we have a world to bring it home to. It will take generations to restore Delvar Prime. We know that. We are ready for that work. But we are alive to do it. I have spent my career categorizing civilizations, their ages, their technologies, their philosophies. I thought I understood what made a species matter. I was measuring the wrong things entirely. The Vithori Conclave is older than human civilization by thousands of years. The Skane Collective has more combined intelligence than any single species can imagine. The Galvex Federation has the largest fleet in the known galaxy. They all stayed home. They had their reasons. They were, by every metric I had been trained to use, the great civilizations of our time. And yet, A species that was barely a century into deep space travel loaded its mismatched ships with food and medicine and weapons and stubborn, feeling, unreasonable people, and came, not because a treaty told them to, not because there was profit in it, not because the math said they could win, because people were suffering and they could not eat their dinner afterward. If you are reading this record in some future time and your world is in danger, I want you to know what I know now. Send the signal. There are ancient species who will calculate the cost and stay home. There are rich ones who will name their price. There are powerful ones who will explain, at great length, why this is not their responsibility. But somewhere, in the Orion Arm, orbiting a small yellow star, on the third planet out, there are people who will hear that you are suffering. They will argue. They will be afraid. They will have very good reasons to stay home. They will come anyway. That is what I know now. That is what I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand, not to explain it away, but to honor it. Because I do not think it can be fully explained. I think it is simply what they are. I am Kes Valori, third archivist of the Delvari, and this is my testimony. We begged the galaxy for help. Only humanity answered.